Michael and his granddaughter, Floriana, took seats near the stage, giving them a close view of the models parading in beautiful festive dresses. 14-year-old Floriana was fond of fashion design and even attended a special school. In her dreams, the girl saw herself as a famous couturier, and her family, as it is supposed to, supported Floriana in her endeavours. So Michael had managed to get tickets to a show featuring a young fashion designer that Floriana adored. Upon hearing the news, Floriana exclaimed joyfully, "Really? You bought tickets?" Her mother Christy smiled at Michael and said, "Daddy, you are so good." Once again Michael felt like a hero. He would do anything for his daughter and grandchildren, including securing tickets to a fashion show. Floriana carefully prepared for the event, choosing her outfit and applying light makeup. Michael thought his granddaughter was beautiful without it, but he understood her desire to dress up and beautify herself. He had raised his daughter alone since she was 7 and knew girls liked to dress up. During the show, Floriana excitedly whispered to Michael, "Grandpa, Gloria Polono is coming out now." Gloria Polono? So the designer is a woman? Interesting to see my granddaughter's idol, Michael mused, relieved that it was a fashion designer, Floriana's role model, rather than the dazzling models showcasing the outfits. First, the models strutted onto the runway, smiling broadly at the audience. Then she appeared. Michael initially doubted his eyes, thinking his eyesight was deceiving him. He looked again. No, it's her, the orphan girl from my hometown. What a surprise! "Oh, I wish I could get her autograph," Floriana sighed dreamily. "We certainly will," Michael confidently asserted, taking his granddaughter's hand and making their way towards the stage. He was sure that Gloria would recognize him too. Michael used to see an elderly woman and a girl around 13 to 14 years old almost daily on his way home from work. He lived in a new suburban community, not far from a quiet, fading village. Most of the villagers who could afford to had long since moved away. Only the poor who couldn't afford a better place to live remained. Michael knew the elderly woman and the girl were from that village. Locals would often show up at the small farmers' market near the bus stop, selling their goods. Evidently, this grandmother and her granddaughter were doing their best to get by. Their makeshift counter displayed seasonal berries, vegetables, and fruits, indicating that likely they had a vegetable garden. They were clearly familiar with the local forest's berry and mushroom spots. During winter, they mostly sold homemade pickles. Occasionally, they sold old items like books or toys, which the girl probably used to play with. Michael often noticed their homemade goods, including knit socks, scarves, and hats. These colourful and stylish items were in high demand. Initially, Michael paid them no mind, having no need for homemade pies or pickles. However, one blustery day in mid-November, he found himself unable to drive past. The sight of the girl in her thin second-hand coat and the elderly woman shivering in the wind sparked a deep sympathy within him. He realized that only desperation could drive people to stand here in such harsh weather. Michael stopped the car next to a familiar couple and bought the rest of their goods, a couple of jars of pickles and strawberry jam, and a knitted scarf in a pink colour. The colour reminded him of his daughter Christy when she was a child. He bought the scarf, thinking his granddaughter Floriana might like it. She was only 2 at the time, but children grow up so quickly. "Are you really going to take all this?" the girl asked incredulously. Michael looked at her and felt a warmth in his heart. The frail girl reminded him of his own daughter Christy, who was similarly thin, wide-eyed and dark-haired. However, Christy had never worn such an old coat or worn-out boots. At 13, Michael's daughter studied hard, went out with friends, flew with her father to the sea. This girl's fate seemed much less fortunate. "Did you knit this?" Michael asked the elderly woman, pointing at the pink scarf. He wanted to lighten the tension a bit. "No, my granddaughter Gloria did it. She's got golden hands." "Wow," Michael winked at the girl. "You sure are talented." "Thank you," Gloria responded, a bit embarrassed but clearly pleased. That evening, Michael pulled a photo album off the shelf. His daughter Christy and Gloria looked similar. Christy was already an adult living in the capital. She studied economics there and found a job. Michael had once dreamed that Christy would take over his small dairy business, which he had built from scratch. But Christy had different plans. Michael didn't pressure Christy or try to change her mind. He understood that everyone has their own path. Christy was never particularly interested in this business and had a fiancé back in the capital. Fortunately, Donovan turned out to be a good man. Michael was naturally worried about his daughter's future and who she might encounter along the way, but his concerns were unfounded. Christy had a good judgment of character and chose a worthy husband. Her husband was kind, cheerful, caring and hard-working. Michael's worries eased when Christy introduced her fiancé to him. The young couple bought an apartment in the capital and both embarked on their individual careers, achieving success in their respective fields. A significant event then occurred in Michael's life. His granddaughter was born. The joy of the new grandfather was unparalleled. He put aside all his business in his hometown to meet his granddaughter. "Dad, why don't you sell your factory? It doesn't bring in much money anyway. If you move here, closer to us, it'll be better for everyone," Christy suggested. Michael, cradling his little granddaughter, was initially inclined to agree. However, he changed his mind as he considered the factory his brainchild and responsibility. He had invested so much effort, soul, time and energy into it that it pained him to think of passing it to someone else. He also felt a responsibility towards his staff. He couldn't predict the new owner's actions. They might even lay off all the workers. At that moment, Michael wasn't ready to let go of everything. Besides, he couldn't imagine living in the capital as a retiree. "Maybe later, when I'm old, decrepit and helpless," he said to his daughter, who understood and didn't pressure him further. Later on, Christy and Donovan had a son named Alan. Michael, overjoyed by his grandchildren, often visited his daughter's family, and they visited him in return. Being close to his loved ones and caring for his grandchildren brought him immense happiness. At first, Michael had doubts. Christy grew up without a mother. Could she give her children what she herself had not experienced? Motherly love, care and understanding. Christy had only ever had her father, Michael, who deliberately remained unmarried and didn't bring any women home, despite having some affairs. He didn't want Christy to have a stepmother. Having heard of many unfortunate stories, he believed it was unlikely for a woman unrelated to them to love his child sincerely and wholly. He never wanted Christy to feel discomfort, jealousy, or irritation, or to feel like an outsider. Michael was content with his own life. He and his daughter shared a close bond. Christy's mother, Laurie, was beautiful. She was an orphan and knew nothing about her relatives, and grew up in an orphanage. Michael met her at an amusement park, where they were both with their friends. The groups merged, resulting in a joyful and lively gathering. Michael was immediately drawn to the dark-haired, big-eyed girl, but he was shy, embarrassed to show her his feelings. Laurie herself understood everything, smiled encouragingly, asked some question, and that was it. The awkwardness was melted like snow in spring. At that time, Michael had not yet thought of his own dairy. He did not even aspire to such heights. He was yesterday's student, who worked in a design bureau for a mere salary, rented a tiny apartment, and everything suited him, in principle. Laurie, an orphan, lived in a small state-provided apartment. It was a disadvantaged neighborhood. The girl was always afraid to return home alone. Well, Michael accompanied her, with pleasure, that very evening of acquaintance, and soon she moved in with him. Soon the couple got married, and Michael felt truly happy with Laurie, except that the man couldn't get away from the feeling that she didn't love him as much as he loved her. It showed in many ways, but Michael, falling in love with her, was ready to forgive her anything. Laurie always aspired to a beautiful life. She liked to dress up well, dine in cafes and restaurants, and dreamed of a car and travelling. It was for her sake that Michael started thinking about his own business. He decided to establish a dairy. Why such a business? Michael's grandfather used to work at such a factory, and he often took little Michael with him, so Michael knew from a young age how and what worked there. Initially, they needed money to start. Loans were taken, and all funds, as is typical in the early stages, were invested in the business. Michael was grateful for the help he received from friends and family who supported his plans. When the plant later started generating a stable profit, he didn't forget any of them. Laurie, however, was not content with their financial constraints at the very beginning. She desired immediate success and didn't believe in her husband's venture. By that time, they already had their daughter, Christy. Laurie often told Michael, "You're a loser. Nothing will work out for you. You're just wasting money." Michael tried to reassure her, presenting the promising prospects of their business and insisting they just needed to be patient. But Laurie didn't want to wait. And then one day, she left. Michael returned home from the office, where he often worked long hours during the business startup phase, to find a distraught Christy alone on the sofa. "Where's Mummy?" he asked, sensing something was amiss.
"She's gone to another city. She said we wouldn't see each other for a long time,"
Christy replied through her tears. Michael scooped up his daughter, holding her close, his heart pounding. A note on the dresser caught his eye. Laurie's farewell letter. She informed him that she had found a man, rich, successful, not a failure, and a loser like you, she wrote in her message. It turned out that this man had finished some business in the city and went to the other side of the country, to his homeland. And he took Laurie with him. "I deserve a better life," Laurie wrote. "You can't provide that for me. I've decided to start anew. Don't look for me. I leave our daughter with you, and I have already filed for divorce." It was evident that Laurie had carefully planned her departure. Despite the subsequent discussions about custody, Michael never understood why Laurie hadn't been honest with him. Why the need for deception? At first, little Christy missed her mother and waited for her. However, Michael never said anything bad about her. A mother is a mother. But as time passed, Christy adapted to her new life. She knew she had a mother somewhere, but her life had moved on, and it seemed there was no room for Laurie's presence. Michael made every effort to minimize Christy's suffering from her mother's absence. He showered her with attention and strove to be a friend to her, nurturing a warm and trusting relationship. The difficulties he faced were not about household chores, as he quickly learned to braid hair, iron dresses, cook, and maintain a clean home. His apprehension lay in the enormity of his task as a man raising a girl. He feared he might not be up to the challenge. However, life proved his fears unwarranted. Christy grew up to be a successful, beautiful, and responsible woman, and an exceptional mother. Everything turned out well. After that first short conversation with the grandmother and the granddaughter, Michael never passed by them again. Whenever he saw them, he would stop, purchase something, and overpay, despite their protests. He realized they truly needed assistance.
"You spoil us,"
said the elderly lady.
"God bless you."
"I can afford it, especially since I can't live without your pickles." Indeed, Michael genuinely loved the old woman's pickles and pies. The pickles were surprisingly soft and flavorful, and such pies couldn't be found in any bakery. Michael was also fond of the items Gloria knitted: socks, scarves, hats. When she learned that Michael had grandchildren, Gloria started knitting adorable things for Floriana and Alan. Christy admired them, and Michael never failed to bring these gifts to the capital. "Does such a young girl create all of this?" Christy used to ask. "I can hardly believe it myself," Michael smiled. "She's talented." "Yes, you're right, Dad. That girl is incredibly talented." Eventually, Michael learned a lot about the lives of Gloria and her grandmother. Both had endured tough times, which was immediately apparent. They lived in a small house in a neighbouring village, with a sagging roof and squeaky floors. Everything in the house needed repair, but there was no money, and they were physically drained. They managed to survive, patching up wallpapers and filling in wall cracks. Every morning, Gloria went to school with a neighbour, an elderly man who worked in the district centre where the school was located. Since his workplace and Gloria's school were on the same route, it was convenient for both. However, Gloria returned home on her own. After a quick lunch, she and her grandmother would go to the market to sell goods. The grandmother would prepare the goods before Gloria's return from school. In the evening they would return home. While the grandmother prepared dinner, Gloria would sit down to study. Although she found studying difficult, especially after a long day of trading, the girl never let her grandmother sell goods alone. She knew it would be hard for her, and she felt sorry for her. In her rare spare time, Gloria knitted, a skill taught by her grandmother. Gloria had been fascinated by knitting since she was 5. She admired her grandmother's deft handiwork, producing beautiful items like socks, vests, and scarves. Intrigued, and considering it magical, little Gloria asked her grandmother to teach her knitting. Her grandmother, thinking it would be a fleeting interest, taught her, but to her surprise, Gloria learned quickly and developed a love for it. Starting with knitting for her dolls, Gloria progressed to creating real items for people. By the age of 10, Gloria had become an expert knitter, able to create items both quickly and skillfully. The grandmother was particularly amazed by her granddaughter's imagination. The girl created unique models, original patterns, and invented her own knitting techniques. Her creations were unique and unlike anything else. The neighbours also praised the girl. One day, a friend of her grandmother suggested selling Gloria's creations. On the first day, everything sold out. It was a huge success. From then on, Gloria knitted for sale when she had time. However, she could only knit a lot during the holidays because her regular schedule was packed with studies. Her grandmother emphasized the importance of education and dreamt of seeing Gloria as a nurse or an economist. Gloria, on the other hand, wanted to be a designer and create interesting clothing models. She even sketched out her designs for dresses, coats, and accessories across several notebooks. However, the elderly lady viewed these ambitions as mere fantasies. She saw the profession of a designer as unreliable. "Where will you find a job afterwards?" she would ask Gloria, who could only shrug in response. Over time, Gloria began to believe that her grandmother was right. She started to think it was better to choose a more stable and down-to-earth profession rather than chase unattainable dreams. "You are almost an orphan," the grandmother often told her. "I won't be around forever. I'm already old. You must stand on your own 2 feet. Your grades won't get you into nursing or economics. Consider becoming a cook or a hairdresser. You'll earn money. There is no one you can rely on, so you must plan for your future." Yes, Gloria was an orphan. Once she had a mother, the beautiful and carefree Megan. Megan was raised without a father, who drowned saving a neighbour's property from a flood. She was less than a year old at the time, so her mother raised her alone, providing for her needs, but not having the time or energy for warmth or tenderness. She didn't want to study. She didn't want to work at home either. She had only one care: to go out with friends and girlfriends. The mother scolded, tried to punish, but to no avail. The girl grew up and stopped obeying at all. Mother and daughter frequently fought, and each argument would end the same way. Megan would storm out of the house, seeking refuge with her friends, who were always willing to provide shelter. Eventually, Megan and 2 other girls ran away from home to the city, hoping to start anew. However, they lacked a solid plan. Her mother looked for her, even got the police involved, but to no avail. Well, they found her, brought her home, and Megan ran away again the next morning. "Well, You can't keep someone chained up or watch them every minute. Megan's distraught mother held on to the hope that her daughter would eventually realize the harsh realities of city life, the necessity to work for sustenance, and the difficulty of finding respectable employment without an education. She believed life would teach Megan these lessons. However, things didn't turn out as hoped. Young Megan quickly found admirers who provided for her, leading her down a path to nowhere. As she descended into this abyss, her mother could only watch helplessly. News about Megan's life reached her mother through the children of neighbours who had also moved to the city and occasionally spotted Megan. The mother herself occasionally visited her daughter, bringing food and money, each time noting with a heavy heart how her daughter appeared increasingly unkempt and frail. Megan hung out a lot, and this could not but reflect on her appearance. Dishevelled hair, swollen face, unhealthy thinness, and some alien voice, cocking hoarse. There was no trace of Megan's former tenderness and beauty. Her mother tried to organise her daughter in the hospital, offered a way out of a difficult situation, never tired of repeating that she would always be near, help, support. She constantly asked her to come back. "You're asking me to go back to this hole of ours? No way," smirked Megan. "I'm not going back there. It's better here. It's more fun. It's real life here." Megan's real life involved constant drinking and hanging out with marginal friends. Naturally, her mother blamed herself for her daughter's situation. She believed she had failed to provide a proper upbringing, having spent 24 hours at work with the assumption that Megan would grow up to be a good person on her own. Now, she felt she had missed out. This guilt weighed heavily on the woman's soul. She tried to fix everything, to change, but more and more clearly realized that she could not do it. One evening, a neighbor arrived at her house unexpectedly. Her daughter worked as a nurse at the local maternity hospital. "You've got a granddaughter," the neighbor announced from the doorstep. "A granddaughter? I visited Megan a few months ago, and she didn't appear pregnant." "Your granddaughter was born prematurely, but she's surprisingly healthy, and your Megan wants to give the baby up. Maybe you could take her in. It's not right if the baby ends up in an orphanage." The next morning, the shocked grandmother visited the maternity hospital. The head doctor made it clear that her granddaughter would not be given to her so easily. The age was considerable, the conditions were unsuitable, and she advised her to influence Megan. However, the new mother flatly refused. "Why do I need these problems? What kind of mother am I?" Megan was right. Entrusting the baby to her wasn't an option. "A baby brings benefits, financial ones at least. You'll get money for it." "But I'll have to spend money on the baby. Diapers, formula, medicine, plus the constant crying, cleaning up after her, feeding her over and over again. It's not a good deal." "Megan, let me take the girl. Officially she'll be yours, but I'll raise her until you're ready. Is that okay with you?" Megan's mother had already seen her granddaughter and even held her in her arms. Her heart was completely won over by this tiny, warm bundle with a cute snub nose and long eyelashes. She couldn't bear the thought of the baby ending up in a state facility. How would she be treated there? What fate awaited the girl? Especially as a premature baby, she needed special care. Megan agreed to let her daughter stay with her mother. "If you want her that much, take her, but don't count on my help. I don't need a baby right now." Megan left the hospital and continued her life. The girl, named Gloria by her grandmother, stayed with her. With Gloria's arrival, her grandmother's life changed, becoming brighter and more meaningful. Caring for Gloria was no easy task, but it brought great joy to her grandmother. Whenever she felt tired, a glance at Gloria's clear eyes, her smile, or her gentle voice would instantly alleviate her worries, filling her heart with joy and warmth. Life was challenging for both of them. Megan received a child allowance, a small payment for keeping Gloria in the family, instead of sending her to an orphanage. The grandmother's salary was modest, and she couldn't work as much as before, since Gloria was still a baby. Despite these hardships, she never complained. Gloria's presence made her happier and stronger. The woman hoped Megan would mature. Occasionally she would show up at her mother's small village house for a visit, as if to visit Gloria, but in reality she came to eat, sleep, and endure another challenging period. Gloria didn't inspire affection in Megan. In fact, she found her own daughter difficult to tolerate. She was bothered by Gloria's chatter, frequent crying, and constant demands. Nevertheless, there was hope that maternal feelings would eventually surface in Megan, perhaps when Gloria was a bit older. And then the irreparable happened. Megan died. There was a fire in the apartment, where there was another party. The wooden building located on the city's outskirts was engulfed in flames. None of the intoxicated occupants survived, though the sober neighbours managed to escape. Thus Gloria became an orphan. Her mother was gone, and her father's identity and whereabouts were unknown. In reality, not much had changed in Gloria's life, because she had lived without her mother before. For her grandmother, however, the hope that everything would eventually be fine had died. From then on, the grandmother and granddaughter lived together, scrimping and saving, always trying to earn an extra penny. They seemed to be managing well enough, even though it required significant effort from both of them. Having learned about their story, Michael felt an increased respect and sympathy for them. He assisted them by continuing to purchase their goods and offering them money, knowing they were saving up to repair their decaying home. He could have easily paid for the repairs and genuinely wanted to, but pride, or embarrassment, prevented the grandmother and granddaughter from accepting his offer. The elderly woman always declined the money. "We'll manage, Michael, don't worry. You're already helping us a lot. We're not that helpless or destitute. We're fine." One day, while returning home from town, Michael saw an unusual scene. Only Gloria was standing at the counter, her grandmother nowhere in sight. Michael stopped his car and approached Gloria, who had matured from an awkward teenager into a beautiful young woman. "Wow, it's only been 3 years. Kids grow up so fast," he suddenly thought to himself. "Hey, why are you all alone? Where's your grandma?" "She's sick." "Is it something serious?" Michael worried. "Maybe she needs medicine. Did you call a doctor?" "It's like a cold or something. She's got a bad cough. Her neighbour made her a herbal infusion. It should help." "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. You have my phone number?" Michael offered. "Okay," Gloria promised. "Thank you so much." "Let me take your stuff, and you can go home to your grandmother. Do you need a ride?" "No, thanks. It's not far. I'll walk." Michael left on a business trip the next day. He was gone for about a month, and upon his return, he was swamped with work at the plant, working day and night in the office. One day, while driving past the place where Gloria and her grandmother usually shopped, he noticed their absence. He didn't think much of it at the time. After all, they weren't there every day, and perhaps they had already finished their work. However, when Gloria and her grandmother didn't appear the following day, or even the day after, Michael began to worry. He hadn't realized how attached he had become to the old woman and the girl. They were no longer strangers to him, but people he cared about. Sincere, grateful, decent, good and simple. Their well-being had become important to him. The man knew which village Gloria and her grandmother lived in, and even had a rough idea of their house's location. Gloria had described it as on the village outskirts next to a large oak tree, with an abandoned house nearby. Based on these clues, he didn't anticipate difficulty finding their humble abode. As expected, Michael found the small, run-down house, without much trouble. Despite never having visited before, he knew where to go and what to look for. thanks to Gloria's and her grandmother's descriptions. He knocked loudly on the gate but received no response. The gate was unlocked, so he pushed it gently and approached the house. It was in dire need of repair, and its condition was worse than he'd imagined. The man chastised himself mentally for not visiting Gloria and her grandmother earlier. He should have fixed this dilapidated place long ago. The house door was locked, and the shutters were closed, with no one responding to his knocks. Michael decided to ask the neighbours about Gloria and her grandmother. He had a bad feeling about the situation. The house across the street seemed inhabited, as laundry was drying on a line and smoke was trickling from the chimney. He decided to seek help from these neighbours. An elderly woman, still robust, quick-eyed and energetic, opened the door. "Hello," Michael said. "I'm looking for my acquaintances who live here, a girl named Gloria and her grandmother." "And who are you?" asked the elderly woman, suspiciously furrowing her eyebrows. "I'm not quite sure how to explain. A friend, I suppose, or perhaps a regular customer. Gloria, her grandmother, and I—" "I see," the woman nodded. "You're Michael. Gloria and Anna have spoken highly of you. You're a good man. So what brings you here?" "Well, I was away, and when I returned, they weren't around. They're usually out selling their goods, but they've disappeared. I thought I'd check in case something was wrong. Maybe they need some help." "So, you're unaware," the elderly woman said, shaking her head with a hint of sadness. "Gloria mentioned she lost your phone number accidentally. She wanted to call you when it happened." "What happened?" "Anna, Gloria's grandmother, fell ill. She had a bad cough and was weak. We initially thought it was a cold and treated her with herbal remedies, but her condition worsened. We called a doctor and discovered it was her heart causing the cough. Polly was taken to a city hospital, and even the doctors couldn't help her. She passed away." The news of her grandmother's death was a massive blow to Gloria. She was not herself. We all empathized with her, supporting her as best we could. All the neighbours understood what losing her grandmother, who had raised her, meant to Gloria. Money for the funeral was collected by everyone. After the funeral, Gloria reflected on her future. She had no desire to remain in her small, crumbling house in the tiny village, where she had lived only for her grandmother. Having completed only school, she recognized the need for further education to avoid wasting a year. Gloria needed advice from a seasoned, life-wise adult. She considered reaching you, Michael, but you had disappeared, and she had lost your phone number. She speculated that you might have moved to the capital to be with your daughter and grandchildren, as your daughter had long been urging you to do. Following this train of thought, Gloria decided to move to the capital city. "There are more opportunities there. I'll find my way," Gloria said to us, and all we could do is wish her the best. We were concerned for Gloria, who had spent her whole life in this remote village and was unfamiliar with the wider world. However, we also understood that our dwindling village offered little for a young woman. She needed to forge her own path, build a career, and stand on her own 2 feet. After taking the remaining money, which was very little, Gloria left for the station early in the morning with a light backpack on her shoulders. That was the last time she was seen in the village. "Probably she's doing well in the city," mused an elderly neighbour. "Ah, Gloria, she's good, responsible, mature. She has her head on straight. Or maybe something happened to her. I don't know, but she never came back." Michael gave the neighbour his phone number, asking her to call him at any time if Gloria suddenly returned. He felt a sense of responsibility for this sweet, naive and vulnerable girl. The neighbour was right. Anything could have happened to Gloria in the capital. She was inexperienced in life and unfamiliar with people. How could a young girl survive alone in such a large metropolis full of human predators? Michael regretted giving the girl his phone number without asking for hers in return. As it turned out, the neighbours also didn't have her number. Years passed. Michael eventually moved to the capital to live with his daughter, sold his house in his hometown, and handed over his business to capable hands. The business had been struggling and Michael couldn't keep up. A young, energetic entrepreneur seemed to be the right person to restore the dairy business to its former state. Michael carefully chose the successor for his business, and the selling price was not his main concern. Michael bought an apartment near his daughter's house in a charming new neighbourhood. There was a park with a picturesque pond nearby, and Michael loved to visit it with his grandchildren, Floriana and Alan. Initially, Michael considered finding a job. However, with his daughter and son-in-law absorbed in their careers, and their children left with a nanny he found too strict, Michael decided to care for his grandchildren. This decision brought him immense joy after being apart from his family for so long. Thankfully, Michael's substantial sum of money from his business job meant he didn't need to work. Thus, he devoted his time to his grandchildren. His daily routine included waking them up, feeding them, driving them to and from the school, helping with homework, and accompanying them to extracurricular activities. Floriana was into dance and design, while Alan enjoyed chess and karate. He also regularly took them to contests, tournaments, competitions, and children's parties. When Michael asked how Christy coped without him, she replied, "We were like hamsters on a wheel. Now we can work in peace. Thank you, Daddy. You're a tremendous help." Michael enjoyed being a necessary part of his daughter and her husband's life, and he cherished his time with his grandchildren. They had developed a warm, friendly relationship. Michael seemed to understand his grandchildren better than their parents did, knowing what they wanted, understanding their moods, and offering support when needed. Time passed quickly, and Michael watched with a hint of sadness as his grandchildren grew up. Floriana and Alan would soon be independent. Michael wished time could be slowed down, even if just for a while. Floriana continued her passion for design, and Michael sometimes saw a reflection of Gloria in her. The man often wondered about Gloria's life now. Michael noticed a fashion show announcement while walking home from the store. The poster on a pole near the bus stop advertised a young couturier's fashion show at a nearby concert hall. Michael knew Floriana would be interested in it and decided to buy tickets. He managed to secure the best seats near the stage, ensuring a memorable experience for his granddaughter. His 14-year-old granddaughter was overjoyed. "Grandpa, you're the best! This is such a fantastic show, but it's going to end late and I have school in the morning. Perhaps I can convince your parents to let you miss a day." At this suggestion, Floriana affectionately hugged her grandfather, then jumped and clapped her hands joyously. Despite her age, she sometimes exhibited the emotional exuberance of a child, a trait that her grandfather Michael adored. They spent the evening at the fashion show, where Floriana, with a keen eye, scrutinized the models' costumes and shared her professional opinions with Michael. He was proud of his granddaughter's insight and knew she was destined for success. Towards the end of the event, a young woman who was strikingly similar to Gloria, a poor orphan girl Michael had known, took the stage. The more Michael studied her face, the more he became convinced it was Gloria. The name matched too. Such coincidences were rare. Michael promised Floriana that they would get Gloria's autograph, which excited Floriana so much she clapped her hands again. Soon they were navigating through the crowd towards Gloria, who was radiating joy. Michael gave her a bouquet that he and Floriana had prepared. As Gloria looked at Michael, recognition flashed in her eyes. For a moment, her smile faded, and her eyebrows arched in surprise. She stared at Michael, clearly recalling their past encounter. Gloria leaned towards Michael over the hum of the crowd and asked him to wait at the 5th exit from the hall. Michael nodded, took Floriana's hand, and positioned himself at the specified exit. "Grandpa, do you even know her?" Floriana exclaimed, barely containing her joy. "Is she really coming up to us?" Gloria didn't come in person. Instead, she sent an assistant. The young man guided Michael and Floriana into the dressing room where they met Gloria. She looked radiant, delighted with her success, and slightly weary. Gloria approached Michael, locked eyes with him, and smiled. "Michael, is it really you?" "I could ask the same. Gloria, is it you?"
he responded. That's me, Gloria nodded. And this young lady, is she your granddaughter, Floriana? Floriana was taken aback upon hearing her name uttered by the star. The idea of her idol knowing her name was mind-boggling. Wow, you remember my granddaughter's name? Michael was astonished. Well, how could I not? I designed many children's outfits because of this girl, whom I haven't even met once. And overall, you've had a significant influence on my life and my choices. How? Michael queried. Well, first you helped me and my grandmother. You helped us out a lot. Looking at you, I wanted to be as strong, rich and kind. I wanted to help someone too, and now I have organized a fund to help children from poor families and orphanages, like I was myself many years ago. We help them find themselves in life, help them not to go down the wrong path. In general, we support them as much as we can. You're an excellent person. I don't even have words. By the way, you're the one who made me believe in myself. My clothes, well, the ones I knitted, they were also praised by my neighbours. But you were the only one who said I was talented, that I'd be great. You really believed in me. You can't even imagine how it helped me in life. I really followed my dream and achieved my dream. I had a little bit of luck there too, but if I had done nothing, nothing would have happened. And I did not give up, including thanks to your words, because of your faith in me. It was like wings behind my back, an invisible support. Gloria, I was looking for you and your grandmother. I came back from a business trip and you were gone. I went to the village and found your house. The neighbours said what had happened to your grandmother and that you had gone to the capital and disappeared completely. That's precisely what happened, Gloria nodded. Why should I have stayed there? I needed your advice at that moment, but I lost the phone number you gave me accidentally. So, I suppose you could say, I ended up nowhere. Are you going to tell us what happened afterward? Michael asked. Of course. I didn't think we'd ever meet again. You can't imagine how excited I am about this meeting. Me neither. I'm delighted too. I mean, I've been remembering you, thinking about you, worrying about you. And now I see a successful young woman in front of me. You realized your talent after all. Yes, I did realize it all in the end. Have a seat. And you, Floriana, sit down. Gloria gestured towards the soft leather sofa in the corner. My story is not short. After her grandmother's funeral, Gloria moved to the capital. With little money and some savings, plus a bit of help from her neighbours, she managed to rent a small room in an old 2-story house near the train station. She then set out to pursue an education. Gloria did not consider prestigious economic and law colleges, instead opting for something similar. She initially thought of becoming a chef or a pastry chef, but fate had other plans. Gloria stumbled upon an ad for an apprentice tailor position at a studio, which promised a certificate at the end of the course and even offered some salary. After some consideration, Gloria decided to take a chance. The studio's owner, Mrs. Jansen, took a liking to her bright student. Often praising her and using her as a role model for other employees, Mrs. Jansen even increased Gloria's salary due to her performance and creativity. Gloria handled the most intricate orders, adjusted clothes to fit perfectly, and expertly repaired even noticeable tears. Most importantly, she always had innovative ideas to improve dresses, suits, and trousers. Gloria had some money. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to rent a better apartment and even save a little. Mrs. Jansen, aware of her young employee's circumstance, advised and cared for her. Then Gloria fell in love for the first time. She was so in love with Tyler, a part-time loader at a nearby store, that she lost her head. Tyler was a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man with a wide smile and strong hands. He approached Gloria first, complimenting her and asking her name. "I like you a lot. I've been watching you for a long time. You're a beautiful girl, and you seem kind. A rare combination these days." Gloria, looking into his bright blue eyes, melted at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. It was delightful to be liked, especially by such a handsome and charming guy. Tyler accompanied Gloria to the bus stop that evening, and the next day he approached her again, talking to her as if they were old friends. Gloria was happy. She waited for Tyler to appear again, just as she had hoped. As they got to know each other, Gloria learned that Tyler, like her, was from a remote village. However, he came from a large, poor family. He moved to the city to earn money and help his mother raise his younger siblings. He sent almost all of his earnings to his family and lived in a cheap hostel. Gloria found this very noble. After Tyler's revelation, her affection for him grew. He seemed reliable and responsible, an ideal life partner due to his commitment to his family. Soon she invited Tyler to move in with her. There was no need for him to stay in a hostel. She relished every moment they spent together, glad to no longer be alone. Tyler showered Gloria with care and warmth. They spent a lot of time together, discussing every topic under the sun. Before long, she considered him her closest and dearest. However, Mrs. Jansen did not share the same sentiment. "He seems insincere and slippery," she commented. "He's a good man," argued Gloria. "Yesterday I came home from work, and he prepared dinner and washed the floors." "It's not a hard thing to do," Mrs. Jansen argued. "It feels like he's gaining your trust. Be careful with him." Unfortunately, Mrs. Jansen's suspicions proved correct. One day, Gloria returned home to find Tyler and his belongings gone, along with her money box. She had been saving up for her own place, and despite Mrs. Jansen's advice to deposit her savings in a bank, she had kept them at her home. Tyler knew about the money because Gloria had told him. She didn't hide anything from him, and he exploited her trust. So it happened that he never truly loved her. He merely exploited the kindness and naivety of a young girl. He lived in her apartment, ate at her expense, and then vanished with a substantial sum of money. "It's all right, dear," Mrs. Jansen comforted the sobbing Gloria. "It's good that he left on his own. You should steer clear of such people. Consider the lost money as payment for a life lesson. From now on, be more cautious about who you let in." Gloria found herself in a precarious financial situation. She had to pay 6 months' worth of rent, plus expenses for food, clothing, and utilities. Her savings were depleted. Everyday activities and good service helped distract her from the pain caused by the deceitful Tyler. It was also challenging to accept that the man she loved was just a common swindler. In this challenging moment, she remembered her old way of earning money. She resumed knitting and sewing items and started selling them in the local market for craftsmen. She desperately needed the money. And then, Gloria glanced at her silent listeners and smiled. And then, as the saying goes, when one door closes, another opens. As it turned out, Tyler did me a favor. If it hadn't been for him, I would never have gone to the market with my things, and Paul would never have noticed me. Gloria, already aware that her creations were unique and popular, didn't pay much attention to the stylishly dressed young man scrutinizing her goods. It wasn't unusual for her creations to attract interest, and this man was no exception. He bought a couple of scarves and a decorative headband, paying more than the asking price, which pleased Gloria. The following evening he returned, this time accompanied by an elegant middle-aged woman. They were Eleanor and Paul, mother and son, and owners of a famous fashion house in the capital. They offered Gloria a job, promising a significantly higher salary and promising prospects. "That's how I got lucky," Gloria said. "Not just lucky," Michael replied, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've been working towards this all your life, since you were a child." "Well, maybe so," agreed Gloria.
She had achieved her dream job, creating unique clothes for clients' requests. Her designs were showcased by runway models, and critics unanimously praised her work. The success was dizzying and exhilarating. Gloria relished in the creative process and earned a substantial income from it. Soon, she was able to fulfill a long-held dream of buying an apartment in the capital. Now a renowned fashion designer, her designs were showcased globally and worn by celebrities. Gloria successfully established her own popular brand. She had a loving husband and 2 sons. She was both happy and successful. "I'm proud of you," Michael said with affection. Floriana, meanwhile, gaped at her idol. Hearing this success story was clearly inspiring for her. I'm thrilled we met," Gloria smiled. "You are one of the people I wanted to personally thank. You've been a great help to me. You've showed me the importance of being kind and strong in this life. And you gave me confidence in my talent. That's been very supportive. By the way, would you like to meet my family? I've told my husband a lot about you." "With great pleasure," Michael and Floriana responded in unison.